Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
The morning Patricia Kellerman's son brought home his new bride, the sunlight was doing that particular thing it did in October, slanting gold through the kitchen windows, pooling on the hardwood floors she had refinished herself after her divorce. Patricia noticed it because she always noticed beautiful things about the house. She had spent 31 years making it beautiful. "Mom," said Daniel, beaming the way he used to beam at Christmas when he was 7 years old and the world still felt endlessly generous. "This is Renee." Was lovely. Tall, dark-haired, with the kind of confident smile that suggested she had never once doubted she deserved whatever room she walked into. She hugged Patricia warmly, complimented the hydrangeas on the porch, and accepted a cup of coffee with both hands like someone who had been raised right. Patricia decided in that first hour that she liked her son's wife. That decision would be tested sooner than she expected. The house was, objectively speaking, remarkable. Patricia had bought it as a wreck in 1991 with insurance money from an accident that had left her with a bad knee and, as her mother had put it, just enough to do something stupid with. She hadn't done something stupid. She had done something visionary. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, an original clawfoot tub that she had personally stripped of 40 years of enamel paint, a garden that bloomed in rotating seasons so that something was always showing off. The kitchen had been gutted and rebuilt twice. The basement had been converted into a proper den with a wood stove and bookshelves that went floor to ceiling. Patricia had done much of the work herself, learning as she went, watching YouTube videos at 2 a.m. with her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, cursing at plumbing diagrams. Daniel had grown up in this house. He knew every creak in the staircase, every cold draft that moved through the hallway in January. He had carved his initials into the bottom of the back porch railing when he was 9 and been grounded for a week, and the initials were still there. Patricia had assumed, without ever articulating it directly, that the house would remain hers until she was too old to manage it, and that after that some gentle negotiation would determine its future. She was 63. She did yoga on Tuesday mornings and could still climb a ladder without her knee complaining too loudly. That future felt comfortably distant. It was Thanksgiving, just 8 months after the wedding, when Renee said the thing. They were standing in the living room after dinner, full of turkey and Patricia's grandmother's stuffing recipe, and Renee had wandered to the window overlooking the garden. The garden was bare and skeletal in November, but even then it had structure and grace, the ornamental grasses catching the last light, the stone path disappearing into shadow. "I keep telling Daniel," Renee said in a warm conversational tone, the tone of someone sharing a pleasant thought, "what a gorgeous home this is." She turned and smiled at Patricia. "My mom would absolutely love living here." Room didn't change. The fire still crackled in the hearth. Daniel was in the kitchen washing dishes and the sound of running water filled the pause that followed. Patricia smiled. "That's sweet," she said, but something in her chest had gone very quiet and very still, the way a forest goes quiet before weather arrives. Over the following months the comments accumulated. They were never rude. Renee was not a rude person. She was, in fact, a skilled communicator, warm, reasonable, always framing things as just a thought, or wouldn't it be something if. There was the afternoon she mentioned, over lunch, that her mother, Donna, had been lonely since the second divorce and was rattling around in a condo in Phoenix that she'd never loved. There was the Sunday she brought Donna to brunch, and Donna had toured the house with wide, proprietary eyes, trailing her fingers along the kitchen countertops, opening the door to the back bedroom as if taking measurements. There was Daniel, her own Daniel, her boy with his Christmas morning face, who sat Patricia down in February and said carefully that he wanted to talk about the future and what made sense in being practical. "Renee's mom is really struggling," he said. "And this house is big, Mom. You're here alone." "I like being here alone," Patricia said. "We worry about you." "You didn't worry about me when I was here alone for 20 years. Daniel looked uncomfortable. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "It wouldn't have to be forever, just maybe you could think about the basement apartment, or, Patricia said. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Patricia did think about it. She thought about it at 2 a.m., the way she had once thought about plumbing diagrams. She turned it over and examined it from every angle. She understood what was happening. She was not naive, and she was not, despite what this situation might suggest, particularly sentimental. She had survived a bad marriage, a painful divorce, 23 years of raising a son largely on her own while working as an office manager for a civil engineering firm. She had rebuilt this house with her own hands, in the metaphorical sense and in several very literal senses. She was not going to be quietly relocated so that Donna from Phoenix could take her clawfoot tub, but she was also not going to have a war with her daughter-in-law. Wars were exhausting and they left damage that took years to repair, and she loved her son. What she needed was a plan. The plan, when it came to her, arrived with the same calm certainty as all her best ideas. She was in the basement, feeding wood into the stove on a cold March evening, and she looked up at the bookshelves and thought, "I know exactly what I want." The next morning she called a real estate attorney named Beverly, who had handled her neighbor's estate sale and had the energy of someone who had heard every family drama and was no longer surprised by any of it. "I want to put the house in a trust," Patricia told her. a very specific trust with very specific language. Beverly asked questions, Patricia answered them. They met twice and spent a total of 4 hours making sure the language was airtight. Then Patricia called a contractor she had worked with before, a woman named Sue who had helped her with the kitchen renovation in 2019, and they had a long conversation about the detached garage at the back of the property. The garage was large. It had always been large. Patricia had used it for storage and a workbench, and for a brief period in the early 2000s a darkroom. It had electricity and plumbing roughed in. With the right investment it could be something else entirely. An ADU, Sue said when Patricia described what she was thinking. An accessory dwelling unit. A small, self-contained apartment. 1 bedroom, a full bath. A kitchen with good light, exactly, said Patricia. For me, Sue looked at her. You're going to move into the garage and let them have the house. I'm going to move into a beautifully renovated private residence on my own property, Patricia corrected, while retaining full ownership of all of it, protected in a trust that stipulates the house may only be occupied by my direct descendants, and that no transfer of use to unrelated parties is permitted without the unanimous agreement of a 3-person board that I will be appointing. Sue was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can I ask what prompted this?" Patricia smiled. "My daughter-in-law has a very loving relationship with her mother." Renovation took 4 months. Patricia moved into the ADU in July when the garden was at its most extravagant, roses climbing the fence, lavender humming with bees. Her new home was 800 square feet of clean lines and warm wood, a kitchen with a window above the sink that framed a perfect rectangle of sky, a bathroom with excellent water pressure, and bookshelves naturally floor to ceiling in the main room. She loved it immediately and without reservation. Daniel and Renee were invited to dinner on the first Saturday of August. Patricia made the pasta dish she had always made for special occasions, with the good olive oil and the fresh herbs from the garden. She showed them the ADU. Renee said it was incredible and meant it. Daniel was quiet in a way that Patricia recognized he was processing something. "Mom," he said finally, standing in her little kitchen looking out at the main house through the window, "did you do this because of—" "I did this because I wanted to," Patricia said. She handed him a glass of wine. "I'm 63, not 93. I was going to downsize eventually. This way I stay on my own property, I maintain the garden, and you and Renee have the house." Looked at her with an expression that was hard to read. Then she said, "And your attorney explained the trust to you?" "The conditions, my attorney wrote the trust," Patricia said pleasantly. "So yes, I understand it quite thoroughly." There was a pause. Something passed between Daniel and Renee, not quite a look, more like a shift in atmospheric pressure. "We're grateful," Renee said at last, genuinely. "I know," Patricia said, and she did know. Renee wasn't a villain. She was a daughter who loved her mother and saw an elegant solution to a problem. Patricia had simply ensured that the solution had proper boundaries. Donna from Phoenix never moved into the house. Patricia heard through Daniel that she had eventually found a townhouse in Scottsdale that she adored, closer to a friend group she'd had since the 1980s. It turned out once the option of the Kellerman house was no longer floatable, other options revealed themselves. Patricia planted a new rose bed along the south fence of the ADU that autumn, a variety called Heritage that bloomed in soft pink clusters and smelled, on warm evenings, like something from a very good dream. She had a small patio where she drank her coffee in the mornings and read in the afternoons. The main house was visible from her chair, the wraparound porch, the hydrangeas, the windows she had chosen herself in 2004 after 3 months of deliberation. She could see Daniel and Renee moving through those windows sometimes, living their life, being young, being married, figuring each other out. She had built that house. She had built this one too. Her knee barely bothered her at all anymore. Some people, Patricia had learned, confuse patience with passivity. They see a quiet woman in a beautiful home and assume she has no plans. They forget that the woman refinished her own floors, rerouted her own plumbing, and once spent an entire February learning how to read a legal trust document at 2 in the morning with her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She always had plans. She just preferred to let the garden grow in peace before she showed anyone what she'd planted.